My daughter is 16 years old and in high school. I noticed recently that she's been behaving in a bad manner, constantly commenting on other people's looks, belongings, calling them stuff that isn't cool, and just being insensitive. It's like she lost a filter or something, because usually she's polite, but my wife suspected that our daughter's sudden misbehavior occurred after she started hanging out with new girls from the school. Basically the mean type, and have picked on their behavior. I've sat with my daughter and had many discussions about how her behavior has been negatively affecting everyone around her. Our housemaid is the person most affected here, and my daughter has chosen her to be her target for hair, clothes, etiquette, criticism. She has complained about our daughter calling her offensive names like filthy and gross for cleaning certain areas in our house. I took a stand and explicitly told my daughter I'd punish her if she ever said stuff like that to our housemaid again. Last week my daughter had a party to go to. Earlier that day she called our housemaid filthy, so I grounded her by not letting her go to the party. She threw a fit and called our housemaid a liar, saying she never called her that. That was the end of it. Days later my daughter came to me saying she couldn't find her iPhone after looking everywhere. She asked me to call her number and I did. My wife and I were stunned to discover that the iPhone was ringing inside our housemaid's bag. I had in confrontation with her immediately, and she denied and cried, saying she never touched the phone nor had any idea how it got there. I noticed my daughter calling her thief repeatedly, so I told her to stop and go to her room. I checked the indoor camera before continuing the argument and saw my daughter place her iPhone inside our housemaid's bag. I was livid. I apologized to the housemaid and gave her the rest of the day off. I then showed the video to my daughter and she was absolutely speechless. I said what she did was immoral and straight up offensive to tamper with that poor woman's livelihood over a petty party she couldn't go to. I told her she was grounded and will have to spend the night in the backyard. She is a germaphobe. But she cried, begging me to not make her sleep with the dirt, insects, and hot temp. I refused to discuss it or I'd make it 2 nights. My wife said I should go easy on her, but I said calling people filthy and accusing them of stealing wasn't okay. In fact, it was the absolute worst. I then went through with my punishment. The reason I chose this punishment was because of the fact that my daughter says she is a germaphobe and used this as excuse to insult others' hygiene and appearance. Our backyard has dirt and bugs in it, and this kind of things get her uncomfortable, but other than that the backyard is 100% safe. I am a 17 years old female, and I live with my mom, stepdad, and stepsister and stepbrother. I lost my dad to cancer when I was 13 years old. We were very close and his death was a major loss in my life. I wasn't able to keep much of his belongings because of my stepdad's insecurities and lack of sympathy and respect for me and my dad. It's sad to say that mom moved on relatively fast. My stepsister and I share a room together. My stepbrother has the bigger room because he's a man, and as a result me and my stepsister are always in conflict. She wants me out during the day as she uses the room as her art studio. She recently accused me of stealing her tools and convinced her dad to get a lock, so now I'm being forcefully locked out and can't get in till after a huge argument and getting mom involved. My stepsister had an argument with her brother and ruined his gaming console when he was out. He came into the room quietly in the evening, stood by the door and asked me to bring him my stepsister's acrylic paint set. I asked if he got permission. He said yes, so I gave it to him and went back to study. At dinner, my stepsister came downstairs yelling that her brother had access to her room and ruined her paint set. There was a lot of yelling and arguing. Stepdad asked how my stepbrother walked into the room when it was supposed to be locked. My stepbrother admitted I helped him out and brought the paint set to high. My stepsister went off on me, called an accomplice, then ran upstairs and took the gift I prepared for my dad for Father's Day. I picked up flowers I planted from our small garden that I take care of by myself, and prepared a nice wooden letter-shaped pot, used my dad's first initial and filled it with the flowers I picked and decorated it with ribbons. It wasn't that good, but it was like a floral letter. I planned to visit his grave and put the gift there. She damaged it to pieces. It was completely ruined. I yelled at her and kept crying. Mom and stepdad gave her harsh punishment and thought it was fixable, but I was so done I called my uncle, who came and berated my mom and stepdad. Stepdad offered to fix it and punish my stepdaughter harder, but I packed my things to go with my uncle. My mom begged me to stay, but I refused and didn't respond when she kept calling saying she did nothing to deserve to be shunned by me and my uncle, who told the family about what happened. The family told mom not to come visit on Father's Day and are angry with her because I moved out over this. Usually for Thanksgiving, we head out to go see family. Someone else always hosts. We typically help sponsor the host by paying for cleanup, etc. Our home is just too small to host the 30+ folks who typically show up through the day. This year that's obviously not happening. Other than us talking about not doing the usual, Thanksgiving didn't come up until yesterday. My kids have the week off from online school, and I was doing a puzzle with them before dinner when my husband walks in after work and says, "So did we get a turkey?" I looked at him and said, "Well, I know I didn't." "Did you?" He stared at me blankly and said, "No." "What do you mean? Do we need to get one still? Is it being delivered?" I shrugged and said, "I don't know nothing about no turkey." The kids and he looked so confused, so I helped them along and said, "I didn't buy anything. I didn't plan anything. No one said anything to me about Thanksgiving. Nobody offered to help meal plan, cook anything, do anything." He blew up yelling at me about how I should have obviously known. I said, "Why? I've literally never planned or made a Thanksgiving dinner in my life. The most I've ever done was help clean up or maybe peel the potato." I asked him why didn't he plan anything, why didn't the kids plan anything? Why is everyone waiting until the last minute and dumping it on me? He just sputtered and yelled and stormed off to his office and left me with the kids. We all had dinner, the kids cleaned up, and I was relaxing with some wine and a book after they all went to bed. My husband tore into me about how he can't believe I left this all to the last minute. Now there will be no Thanksgiving. How could I be heartbroken to do this to the kids, etc. So I just looked at him and said, "Why didn't you plan? Why did you wait to the last minute to ask me?" He told me I was being a for no reason and stomped off to go sleep in his office. He left without saying a word this morning. I followed up with my kids and asked them if they wanted Thanksgiving. They said they didn't care because the food isn't that good most of the time anyway. I work as well. We split chores, but there's no hard line. I do some, he does some. We both cook, and the oldest cooks as well. I just don't get why Thanksgiving is on my plate. Why, just because I'm a woman? A lot of people seem to think that my kids are like toddlers or something. They're old enough to help make the menu for dinners, help with cooking, etc. Anyway, I told my husband that if he wants to do some traditional Thanksgiving with all the fattening, carby, salty, beige food, he can go ahead and plan it and I'll help in the same capacity as always. If he wants me and the kids to cook something together, aka a normal, average Thursday, I'll continue with what was scheduled. The kids genuinely do not care. Thanksgiving doesn't mean anything to them. One of them has been asking for us to stay home for years. One of them barely touches the food as it, and the other one only likes to go so she can see her cousins. And she sees them all the time anyway. The middle kid already dug out another puzzle for us and they're just happy they're off school. Also, we don't do Christmas. I am a 37 years old male. I have a 13Y.0 son. I was a widower when I met my now wife. She has a 16Y.0 daughter from another relationship. The family is often on pretty good terms. My son is the quiet one in the house. He keeps to himself a lot but not to the point of being concerning. My wife and stepdaughter are the complete opposite. They both encourage him to be outgoing and share activities and join gatherings with extended family. My son complained about having to be forced out of his comfort zone and having his need for space invalidated. I spoke to both my wife and stepdaughter and asked them to give him space and freedom to spend his time however he wanted. They apologized and promised to let him be. As Mother's Day was approaching, I wanted to throw my wife a surprise Mother's Day celebration. It was no longer a surprise because my stepdaughter gave her the heads so she could prepare. Yesterday I got off work earlier than usual to get final arrangements done. We planned to celebrate at the restaurant and invited her family there. I had the key, and while I was entering the house through the front door, I overheard my wife and stepdaughter talking to my son. My wife was asking my son if he could convince me to let him stay home and not go with them to the restaurant to celebrate. I paused and decided to keep listening. My son said why, and she told him that his introverted and socially inept attitude will make her family uncomfortable and will ruin the mood. He promised her that he'd be well behaved and would try to interact and socialize with everyone, but she said that she wasn't buying it. He kept reassuring her, but she snapped and told him that technically she's not his mom, so she didn't get why he wanted to celebrate Mother's Day with her so badly. My stepdaughter threw some, I don't remember, backhanded comment, and then both of them were shocked to see me standing there. Both were staring without saying anything. I told my son and his stepsister to go to their rooms, then told my wife that the celebration was off, cancelled. She tried to argue, asking why repeatedly, and I told her why. She tried to explain that she didn't mean it like that and that I only heard part of the conversation but not all of it. I told her I was done arguing and the decision was already made. She yelled, asking what she was going to tell her family, and said that I was making tremendous mistake towards her. I ignored her while she kept throwing tantrum after a tantrum. Early this morning she took my stepdaughter and went to stay with her folks. Not a single call or text from her so far. Situation is full of tension. I'm upset still, but more hurt, to be honest. I mean, yes, I did say I was going to have this celebration, but I thought that what she said to my son was too harsh to ignore.